I basically wanted to just talk about how discs are made because I don't think disc golfers talk about how discs are made enough. So yeah, we're gonna do this pretty much as a Q&A the whole time, but I'll do a little intro just to warm us up a little bit, you know? It's always good to warm up before a round, so let's warm up. Basically 99% of discs are injection molded. We will primarily be talking about that. However, gladly talk about anything out there. My expertise, and by expertise, I'm a total noob and beginner when it comes to manufacturing, but my expertise is on the injection molding side. So that's where we'll spend most of our time. And an injection molding machine is really simple. At the end of the day, there's a barrel. Inside of that barrel, plastic melts and it gets pushed into a mold. A mold is just this chunk of steel or aluminum. We'll call it metal. It could be plastic. Okay, anyway, it's this chunk of steel, and inside of that there's just empty space. When plastic gets pushed into there, it fills out, and that's how it. That's the very fundamental version. Can I borrow your disc? The problem, what?
I didn't mark it yet.
You didn't mark it? That's fine. So the thing about discs is they look so simple because it's just this little circle, right? But discs are so much more complex than they appear. Was that worth it?
Yeah.
Just for the demonstration of holding a disc? Basically, plastic seems to be a very simple thing. However, injection molding plastic is a science that is just so, you stand at a machine and you bang your head against the machine all day long, and that's pretty much what it's like. So I wanted to get into the weeds about it, and I really wanted to just launch off of questions, and based on those questions, we can go as deep as you all want to go. Should I do a little more of an introduction to how a disc is made, though? No? We're good?
So
Do
we're
it?
top and the bottom.
Yeah, okay. We're gonna launch into the questions. Let's do it. All right, the question here was, is there a top and a bottom? So you have basically, typically it's a 3-cavity mold, but there's also 2-cavity molds. So there will be a top and a bottom, or there's a top and the bottom is split into 2 parts. And the reason the bottom is split into 2 parts, I really should have brought a disc for demonstrations, but now I'm stealing it. Basically, the bottom is split into 2 parts because if not, it's incredibly hard to get this to come out of the mold because it wants to stick on this side. So there's what's called a stripper plate, which there's gotta be a better name out there, right? There's a thing called a stripper plate, and it strips the part off of the mold. And that's why it's split into 2 parts, if that makes sense. Could we name a disc the stripper plate? Could. I don't know if I want to. Yeah, my marketing guy's giving me the thumbs up, so I guess the wheels are already in motion. Yeah. What else? I'll get deeper as we go, but yeah, Michael. What about air pockets? Okay, this will be so fun because we'll get into all the complexities of all of it. Okay, so basically, when you have a mold, you have this cavity inside that's empty and you fill that with plastic, right? The only problem is what's in there before the plastic? Air. And that air has to go somewhere. So venting is a very common thing in mold building where you have these specific places where the air can escape. And that's basically the size of like 1 or 2 thousandths of an inch. So it's a really small thing. And it's the difficult part is you have to design a disc, or you have to design a mold so that the last spot to fill will also push that air out. So an interesting thing about discs is that they're injected from the center. And so in injection molding, you want to inject from thick to thin. You want to start at the thickest part. In discs, they start from thin to thick. It's completely backwards in all of injection molding. Like this is, if you ask anyone else, this is the wrong way to make a product. So the question comes up, what if we just started from the outside? The problem is how would air get out? If you started from the outside, it would fill the outside go to the center, and you'd have to have venting in the center of the disc. So ultimately, you can't really do it that way. There's probably a way to do it. I don't know, but it's probably very complex and difficult. Anyway, all that to say, air pockets typically are not a huge issue in disc golf because you're able to pack that outer wall out. In injection molding, pack is basically like you inject, so you push plastic in, and then you spend the last little bit. It's called pack and hold. So I started 5 years ago in my garage saying, I'm gonna make a disc in my garage. I built this injection machine that operated on my body weight. I had one photo for today, and the screen is hard to see, so it is what it is. It was me hanging in my garage. Pack and hold is really just, I would hang on it, and then the bar would get to here, I would get on top, and I would push down, and then I would just hold it at the bottom. That's pack and hold in injection molding. So you're really able to push all the air out. There's not too many problems because of that venting, but because you have to push really hard, you also get what's called flashing. Has anyone heard of flashing before? Why are things named stripper plate and flashing? I'm now just thinking of that. There's gotta be, we'll reinvent, or we'll name a disc after it. Okay, so flashing is basically when plastic gets in between the mold parts where it's not supposed to, basically. So the two molds meet, let's just call it a 2-cavity mold, it meets, and because you're pushing so hard inside of there, I know I'm going beyond answering your question, Michael, but we're here, and I have the stage, so I'm going. So because there's so much pressure inside of that, the mold can basically microscopically open. So it's called blowing the mold open if your injection pressure overcomes your clamping pressure. So an injection machine, there's two major parts. There's the injection side and the clamping side. All the clamping side does is just hold the mold closed like this, right? And on our machines, that's respectively 180 tons of pressure and 220 tons of pressure, which is really a number I can't comprehend. It's crazy. On the other side, it's melting the plastic. That's pretty much all that you're doing over there. All the complexities are on that side of the machine. That's where you spend all your time programming and everything like that. But injection machines are designed so that the injection pressure can overcome the clamping pressure, not the clamping pressure overcoming the injection pressure. Because if I'm clamping like crazy hard and I inject and the clamp can't basically blow the mold open, then where does it go? It has to then travel backwards and the whole thing would blow. I don't know if that made sense, but it's interesting to me. So I think we were talking about air pockets, but now we're here. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so discs are made primarily the question was what kind of plastic do we use? Premium plastic discs are pretty much all TPU, thermoplastic polyurethane. And baseline discs are gonna be different. They're gonna be like a TPE, which if you wanna get really silly, TPU is a type of TPE, so it's stupid. But anyway, TPEs and then propylenes and other stuff. So baseline, and then we use 100% recycled. So we are very proud of that, and it's okay. So two more things there. Sorry, I know there's more questions. We'll get there. So two more things with the type of plastic we use. One, TPU is basically in this world between plastic and rubber. It's very, very complex. It's a type of plastic, but hard plastics and soft plastics are very different to mold. So soft plastic, being TPU, it's also called hygroscopic, which means it absorbs moisture from the air. So all of your discs that are premium have moisture in them. And if we ground that up and just put it into an injection machine, it would boil. It just wouldn't, it doesn't work. It ruins it completely. So you have to dry it beforehand. So in the garage, I used a toaster oven that I got off Facebook Marketplace. Now we use an industrial dryer. But yeah, so you have to dry it beforehand. And it's so picky. TPU is so picky, and there's thousands of minor variations of TPUs, and they all want to do a different thing. So one wants to go really fast into the mold, one wants to go really slow, one needs the barrel temperature to be really high, and then like TPU doesn't want the screw that's melting the plastic to go really quick, but TPE is fine with it going quick. So that's like where you get to all in the weeds and the complexities and stuff. I guess I should say that, well, to get into the machine real quick, when plastic feeds into the machine, it goes into the barrel. Inside of the barrel, there's a screw. So think of like a wood screw. That's fine. It's got flutes, right? And as it spins, it's pushing plastic forward, right? Is this mental image? Are we there? Okay. The majority of the heat that melts the plastic comes from that friction. Not the temperatures that you input on the band heaters that are around the barrel, but just friction by the screw pushing it forward. So that gets into why it's so hard to make something out of recycled plastic. One of the primary problems is recycled plastic kind of looks like regrind. They call it regrind because you grind it all up and it's just these ununiform pieces that look like, what a horrible analogy this is going to be, grape nuts. Anybody? Okay. My mind's on food clearly because virgin plastic looks like Dippin' Dots. I'm definitely using that analogy again. Okay, so the machines are designed for consistency. You want to isolate every variable and make it as consistent as humanly possible. And if you have a consistent bead, like Dippin' Dots, it's much easier to do. If you have grape nuts, on the other hand, maybe we should try making a disc out of grape nuts after this. We'll see. Anyway, if you have something that's inconsistent in size, then as it's pushing forward, that friction and that, it's called shear heat, that becomes completely like inconsistent. Because one size pellet is going to affect it in one way and one in another way. And then we'll get regrind from companies and they'll have one that's, okay, Nathan, fine. See ya. I will shame you if you leave. No, I'm joking. I know him. It's fine. Yeah, anyway, I think that answers the question a little more than it should, probably. You've been waiting a while.
You started off by making recycling discs for minis. They use 100% recycled plastic.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the recycled plastic and trying to make an actual disc out of recycled disc? And what's the process for that?
Totally. Yeah, getting deeper into the type of plastic we use. So we use 100% recycled. And that comes from all over the place. I've never said this, but a lot of people, I left a vacuum of people thinking something. A lot of people think we make all of our discs out of recycled discs. And that's not quite true. We've recycled over 20,000 discs at this point, which is crazy. We've made way more than 20,000 discs though. So it's pretty much one-to-one in recycling a disc. So we use plastic from discs because we have a disc recycling program. If you didn't already know, you can send us your dog-chewed, broken, super beat-up disc and we will recycle it. We're the only ones doing it in the world and I'm super proud of that because if you sent a disc to a recycling company, they don't know what Z plastic is. They don't know what star is. There's nothing on the disc, other people's discs, our discs have it, but there's nothing on the disc that says it's made out of TPU or TPE. So we don't know what type of plastic it is. Same thing with recycling companies. They don't necessarily know how to recycle it. So we've gotten discs to recycle. We've gotten plastic from agriculture. Cattle tags are made out of TPU, a fun fact. Also a fun fact, cattle tags are replaced over a cow's lifetime, not just one and done. Maybe I'm dumb, but I thought it was just like you get a tag and you're good to go. Anyway, so cattle tags, we've recycled plastic from the medical industry. TPU is super common in medical. Also in automotive, think of like weatherproof floor mats. That's gonna be a similar thing. The most common TPU you probably have in your household is gonna be the overmold on your toothbrush. So we're all familiar with overmolding, which is how MVP's making their discs and some other people. Toothbrushes with that little grippy handle, those are overmolded. So that's a little fun fact for you. And then we've also gotten plastic from, where did I go? We've consumer goods. So another one that happened very recently is this phone case company reached out to us. They make their phone cases out of TPU, which is crazy, and asked if we could recycle their bad cases or their dead stock because they have iPhone 3G cases or whatever, and the iPhone 3G doesn't exist anymore. So we made that, and thank you for being my prop person for the day. This is what that disc came out looking like. So this is with recycled phone cases, which is crazy. Apparently, yeah, we call it Pink Pony Club, TM. The guy who makes our discs always has a headphone in, and you can guarantee it's Taylor Swift, Lady Gaga, or Chappell Roan, which is amazing. So shout out to Kyle. Apparently there is a plastic in this phone case that has a different melting point than the TPU, and that's higher, luckily. So it came out as these flecks, and yeah, we're quite content with how that came out. You are one of like 200 people in the world who has that disc.
Oh, I jumped on it.
Yeah.
Like, no, scalpers.
You're the best. Yes.
Is there any other plastic or things you use to recycle, like bottle caps or
Yeah,
gas?
a great question. Are there other things we could use? Are there other things we could use to make a disc? Not all plastics are created equal. So the plastic that makes a bottle cap, and that makes a pill bottle, and that makes a water bottle, and that makes all of the things we have in this room are going to be different. And plastics are engineered for different performances. So what you want to make a bottle cap, for example, is not going to make a great phone case, because to get it out of the phone case, the whole thing cracks, right? A pill bottle is great for being a pill bottle, but if I make a disc out of it, it's going to shatter when it hits a tree. So it just depends what plastics you can use, but primarily discs want to be made out of something that's extremely durable. So it's other applications where you need that durability that you find that plastic, which apparently people go crazy when they're brushing their teeth, is what that means. Anyway, yeah, more. Yeah, in the back. Great question. Yeah. No, great question. So we'll get plastic both in its regrind form and then not yet ground that we have to grind, like a phone case or a disc. And basically, it's a really annoying manual process to keep the colors separate. In plastics, basically all plastic starts clear, and this is called natural, like the color in injection molding. They'd call this natural. And you add colorant. So colorant is it's like a concentrate. So think of, why are all these food analogies here? Think of like those frozen juices that you like pour into whatever, a jug, and then you fill it with 4 cups of water or whatever, and now you have, concentrate. I could just say, think of concentrate, whatever. It's gotta be a food analogy. So basically you put like 0.5% color in, and it blows up and expands, and basically you have a completely colored product then. On our side, we don't use colorant because colorant is also something that just has to be created, which uses, natural resources like fossil fuels or non-renewable resources specifically, like petroleum. So we don't use that, but basically everything we get in was a color at one time. The easiest way to recycle it would be to just mix it all together, and you'd get a really nice black disc, which is not the best, but shout out to MVP. They have the hack because they realized they could do that and then put the overmold with color on it, and it still works for our application, which is huge. So it's made it possible for them to recycle so many discs. So yeah, right here. Yeah, where's our manufacturing operation? We're based in Denver. I started in my garage. We've upgraded since from the garage. We now have 2 injection machines. They're like the size of like an F-350 basically. Great analogy. and we're in Denver, just right in Denver. So everything we do is right there. I'm a big believer in local, so yeah, we do it all in-house, and I'm super proud of that. So yeah, Denver. There was another one very back, yeah.
Just wondering, what's the lead time in creating a disc going to raw components to finished product?
So like on the injection molding side, or like before all of that, like design, making the mold, all that stuff?
Just from the production.
Just the production side. So the only thing is we have to plan ahead. So I'm gonna take out the 4 hours we need to dry the plastic. But technically, it starts with drying the plastic for 4 hours. Once it goes into the machine, the cycle time, so how long it takes to make each product on discs, is typically around 60 seconds. So some of ours are as low as like 40, 45 seconds. Some of ours are as high as like 80 seconds. I think it averages out when all is said and done to about 60 seconds. So yeah, plastic goes in, and then each barrel length for us is like 6 to 7 discs worth. So to get it up and running, it takes a little bit, but once you're running, it's 1 a minute. It's a crazy feeling because they're just stacking up as you go, and we're all disc golfers, right? Like the feeling of a new disc never gets old, and making them every day and being able to do that, it's such a joy. For us, the stat we care about most is not that it's 1 disc a minute, but that it's 2.5 minutes is 1 pound of plastic. So for us, 1 pound of plastic is recycled every 2.5 minutes. And we're very proud of that. If we're running 2 machines, that doubles. Yeah. Yeah, very back.
I know you've partnered with some other manufacturers to try and get more recycling.
Yeah. Yeah.
How many other major manufacturers have y'all partnered with to try and reinforce the biodegradable and reusable?
Yeah. I was telling someone earlier, I think the most important thing we do is not the discs we make, but the inspiration, and being able to say, hey, like we all can have an impact at the end of the day. So I think when it comes to disc manufacturers, not everyone is stoked to partner up. There's 2 really big beliefs in the world, or classes of beliefs. One is to grow my slice of the pie, I have to take from your slice of the pie. And one is to grow my slice of the pie, we can work together and grow the pie. I don't need to grow my slice, because if we grow the whole pie, then we're all growing together. Disc golf manufacturers fall in both boats. And so not everyone is stoked to partner up because they see the world that way. But if we can inspire them to do something, then it's all good. And so I think our impact, I will just say this proudly, I think our impact has been felt across disc golf at this point. When I was like a year still in my garage, one company came out with a recycled line, and someone commented like, we know you had something to do with this trash man. And I was like, I don't think so. Now I'm very confident that we had something to do with that, because I started playing in 2008 and I love this sport. I just wanted to throw recycled discs. And what I was told when I started Trash Panda was there was no market for recycled plastic. And all we're doing is proving that there's a market. So I'm very proud of that. Very back here, sorry.
So my question is about disc design.
Yeah.
So when you design a disc, so if you want to know, when the cross section of the disc is an airflow, it's using it really effectively. So when you design a disc, do you go bottom up? Do you say, I want my disc to flow like this, and then create airflow that's part of it?
Yeah.
Or do you design the airflow and then see the disc?
So I'm not necessarily the best person to talk to disc design, because I've only designed so many at this point, and we're still learning as we go. I would say what's most interesting is you can design something in CAD, so in 3D modeling, you can design it. The final product you get is not necessarily going to look exactly like that, because plastic shrinks, and so you have to accommodate for that shrink. And then with injection molding, you can change parameters to get the plastic to shrink way more or to be flatter. If I went cycle times of like 2 minutes and it stayed clamped in the mold for 2 minutes, those discs would be a lot flatter than if I opened the mold super quick. So basically, for us, it's every disc teaches us something new about disc design. So the inner core was our first disc. It's a putter. We started there with just going, okay, I want something that feels like every beadless putter you've ever felt, right? Like you just know this is a beadless putter. Let's just start with a simple disc like that. And so we just started with what we knew and tried to make something. We weren't reinventing the wheel, if you will. And then we learned, from that disc we learned about specific gravity, and then from another disc we learned about how much dome can be like. Yeah, it's I don't know. Clearly, I'm not the best to talk about it. It's a really complex process because even different TPUs have different shrink rates. So the fact that your two destroyers don't fly the same is very normal. Not saying it shouldn't be that way. Obviously, every manufacturer is trying to have the most consistency they can. But in injection molding, the specifics we are looking for as disc golfers go beyond the capabilities of injection molding when it comes down to it. Injection molding is a science and it's very precise, but we are looking for perfection in disc golf. We don't just want that flight to be consistent, we want that feel to be consistent, and then we're like, hey, I want to be able to grip lock it into a tree at 80 miles an hour and for it to still fly the same, right? So we're discs are a very complex product. They look very simple, but yeah. I don't know if that answers it, but yeah. Actually, Ed first, and then I'll get to you, but Ed, good to see you.
So speaking of like different plastics, different TPUs,
Yeah.
different rates, for you guys, how do you end up with like a consistent disc when you're dealing with inconsistent material?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're trying our best to do that. The first run we ever did of the inner core was this bright blue, a lot of people know. And we got 11,000 pounds of that. And the regrind was not grape nuts, it was like potato chips. They were huge. It was crazy. One of the boxes, it was all blue, right? One of the boxes, as we were going down in that box, this is 1,000 pounds of plastic, it started becoming yellow and then white. So we did not buy that plastic. We bought the blue plastic, but hidden underneath was something else. So in recycling, it's extremely inconsistent. And so we're trying to do everything we can to make it consistent. Ideally, we're just as consistent with the profile as possible and the dome. But then if not, we're trying to communicate where those differences lie. So typically our batches of plastic will be similar enough. Like that inner core example is, we didn't make the white. That white is actually still in our warehouse. We're trying to figure out what to do with it because it's a whole thing. Anyway, we'll figure it out. But the one thing we have on the bottom of all our discs, except for the Canyon Proto, if anyone has it, is the date code. So on the bottom of every single disc is the literal date it was made in terms of month and year. So at least you can know if you like that disc, you can probably find that color and that date code, and that's going to be the same disc for you. So that's our goal. But yeah, it's tough. Right here.
So every disc obviously weighs on the right material. Like lightweight disc, is that a different plastic blend, or you just don't push as much into the injection?
Wow. How juicy do we get? So you can't not push as much in because it won't fill the mold. So then you would have air pockets like Michael talked about. You'd have something else. So you really can't not push as much in. There are different specific gravities. So you have, you'll have a TPU that's a 1.1 specific gravity and one that's a 1.2 specific gravity. And so the calculation for how much a disc weighs is the specific gravity multiplied by the volume of the mold itself, the cavity. That's cubic centimeters if you multiply those two things, you'll get the weight. So if I told you the inner core was 133 cubic centimeters, and then you took an inner core that was 165 grams, whoever does good math can tell me what the specific gravity would be, right? We can backtrack that. So all that to say, really it's the mold geometry and the specific gravity. To then go crazy light, you either have to use a different plastic or you can use things like Blizzard is an example of how you could get away with that. You can, different additives in the plastic can help you play with the weight. Obviously, people know that from lightweight discs, but people also know that from heavyweight, not realizing it. So like MVP, they're trying to put as much weight as they can in the rim, right? So they're trying to use additives to take weight out of the center, AKA fission, and they're trying to put as much weight in the rim as they can to get that full gyroscopic effect. So for us, when we get plastic in, we figure out what the specific gravity is, and then we know what mold we can use it in. The reason I said how juicy do we get is because the PDGA isn't like necessarily regulating molds like the FBI regulates things. So basically, it's hypothesized that there are varying molds by some manufacturers that are making the lightweight and the heavyweight of the same disc. I can't confirm or deny, but genuinely I cannot confirm or deny. I've just heard that. So, yeah. It's all over the place. Yeah.
Kind of on that same vein, so with MVP using a heavier plastic on the outside, how does that mess with your process? Do you need to separate the flake plate from the overmold before grinding? Or?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the question was about how does MVP, like putting a lot in the outside and a little in the inside, affect our recycling process? And the answer is it does. It affects it. You can actually grind it all up together. MVP has actually shown this through the Smarter Everyday video. If you haven't seen Smarter Everyday's video, you should, after this, you could just leave right now and go watch it, honestly. Yeah, it's a great video, and it shows behind the scenes with MVP's process. They just mentioned in the extended version that they grind everything up together, and then, so here's a weird one. They didn't talk about this part, but they grind all of the flashing that's trimmed, which is the heavy weight, up, and then they make that into R2 neutron. But R2 neutron, that's the core, not the overmold. So the gyroscopic effect might not be in effect on overmolded discs. I'm sorry, on R2 neutron, because that's basically just a streamlined disc at that point. So that's kind of interesting, because if your R2 volt flies the same as your fission volt or whatever, then maybe the effect doesn't have as much of a effect as we think. I don't know. Someone with the robot should test that. Are they here? Are you in here? Did you have a question? Yeah.
From when you started in your garage hanging on the lever to try to press them, and then moving from your garage making one at a time to the injection molding machine.
Yeah.
How much of what you learned from that single press, single mold, and going from the toaster oven
applied
to the dryer, how much of that were you able to apply when you first got the machine in,
yeah,
the first shot, or did you basically have to start all over at ground zero and be like, okay, I learned a little bit over here, but that doesn't apply now that I have this F350 size machine?
Yeah. So the question is like how much applied for me from the garage to then getting the first industrial injection machine, which is a great question. There are some very weird things that are the same. Like if plastic was melted inside the barrel of my machine and it froze off, which means it cooled and just hardened at the bottom, I would use a torch in my garage because that's the only thing I could think of. And we actually started with scaling with a local manufacturer, and plastic froze off at the front of the injection machine on this massive industrial injection machine, and he pulls out a MAP gas torch, which is exactly what I use in my garage to get it unfrozen. So it's really weird because there's some things that apply. The general concept is very similar in some ways, but the one way it's different, which is where we did start from like zero, was that in my garage, the plastic just heated up by the band heaters, and it was a plunger style, so I would just push it through. In injection molding with a true machine, you have a screw, which is where all the science comes in with programming and processing and trying to figure out how to do that right. So I didn't have that friction element, which is where the complexities just go crazy. So yeah, that's a similar answer. Oh, I use less body weight in the scaled version too. So yeah, 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 in the back.
The MVP table actually just has split in half, so you can see that process as well.
Nice.
They have a vision time lapse and another like neutron one.
Great.
The other question I had is, through the process of you designing the 3, 4 with an asterisk different discs that you have, or 5 with an asterisk, I should say, 2 ETs, what has been the biggest learning piece that you have taken into the next disc that you need to go?
Okay. What's the biggest thing I've taken from one disc to the next one?
Yeah, what's
Yeah.
the thing that you basically learned from inner core into Dune into
Yeah.
ETs into Canyon that you're like, this is what we're prepared for next?
Well, it's so hard because the inner core was 2.5 years of development starting in my garage. The Dune was basically like, okay, let's go. Let's scale. Let's do this thing. We've made 1 disc, we can make 2 discs. And the Dune taught me, slow down. You don't need to go that fast. And by fast, I mean we released it 8 months later. So it really was not that fast, but we tried to go quickly. To ozone, that's when we decided to get our own injection machine. So when I look at the ozone, I think of all the bringing manufacturing inside of our control. So the lessons are more like the full business rather than like in the disc itself. This is not the question you asked, but I'll just say, every time we release another disc, I did not expect this. I fall more in love with the inner core. So the inner core, people are like, do you have a favorite disc? Oh, I can't ask that question. That's like asking favorite kid. I'm like, no, I have a favorite disc, the inner core. Yeah. So, and it's not like asking if you have a favorite kid. Yeah.
Maybe you have a video on this, but Trash Panda, raccoon logo.
Yeah.
Not more of a panda.
Not more of a panda. Trash Panda is kind of like a slang term for a raccoon. So because they're the dumpster diver of the animal kingdom, and we're the dumpster diver of the disc golf manufacturer kingdom, it kind of made sense. So yeah, yeah, yeah.
How concerned are you with contaminants in your recycled stuff?
Great question. First of all, I just have to say I love your quarter zip. You look great. Yeah, incredible. So how concerned are we about contamination in the plastic? It's a huge problem we deal with. We got 20,000 pounds of plastic from a supplier who actually not from a supplier, sorry. So there's suppliers or brokers who are like buying and selling whatever. And then this was actually, we started calling companies, just cold calling companies being like, do you make stuff out of TPU? If so, we'll recycle it. Whatever bad parts they have, anything. So if disc golf companies don't have a recycled line, where's that scrap going? Like that's an important question we need to be asking as a industry. Anyway, so there's a lot of industries out there though that have that. So this one came direct from the manufacturer. They had all this regrind of bad parts, and their people were told not to throw the thing in when it had an insert in it, and they kept throwing the thing in when they had an insert in it. So we got 20,000 pounds of plastic that had zinc, which is a type of metal inside of it. Now it's not a ferrous metal, it's a non-ferrous metal, which means you have magnets in a couple places in your process, like in the dryer there's a magnet, in the hopper there's a magnet, and that's not gonna catch zinc, which means we were just making discs one day and all of a sudden we started getting metal inside of the mold. And that's very bad, we do not want that. So we had to buy this $8,000 machine that's called a metal separator. We call him Timmy. And it's just gravity fed. You just drop plastic through, and the second it sees metal, it has this air cylinder that just actuates, and it kicks whatever with that out. in real time, very quickly. It's crazy. I think it's magic in real life. But we hand-fed 20,000 pounds through that machine. And that machine exists because of why we needed it, but also like you think of anything in like food is going through a machine like that to make sure there's not metal or anything else from manufacturing processes. So yeah, it actually, one time we ground up a disc with a foil stamp on it, and it caught the foil and kicked it out. I told you it was magic. You didn't believe me. So yeah, right behind.
So with the foam case regrind disc, it looks like there's a pretty even dispersion of the dissimilar density.
Yeah.
Has anybody figured out why it's so even? Other than, well, obviously it's going through the same auger, but you would think that material is of different density. When one melts and one doesn't, that would be kind of a separate.
It would separate like oil or something. Yeah, so the screw in most injection molding machines, you can get custom screws, but they're referred to as mixing screws. And that's primarily because the plastic starts as clear and it gets color. And most companies want that color to be complete. So think of like I always point at there's like a vacuum in our shop that's a DeWalt vacuum. And I always point at it, and it's like they want the black part to be black, they want the yellow part to be yellow, they don't want swirls. In the injection molding industry, swirls are typically grabbed as bad parts. This guy works in injection molding, he's nodding his head, validated. So if there's swirls, it's a bad part. And in disc golf, we're like, give me the swirls. So the mixing screw is literally designed to mix as well as melt. So I think the consistency probably just comes down to that being that it's really trying to mix everything together. Also, on the question previously, I mentioned the metal, but I'm not sure I answered the question of how much of a concern is it for us, and it's everywhere for us. It's the same. I talked about the box that had yellow and white at the bottom. It also, the inner core was made of this blue. So a big box is called a Gaylord, which again on the bad names. One of our Gaylords had blue with some white in it, one had blue with some red in it, one had blue with some green in it. It was just like all over the place. And then, no joke, we found fabric, just like molded with the plastic. So there was just like, we couldn't even use it. It's still sitting in our shop. We're trying to figure out what to be able to do with it. So it's a huge problem we deal with, is the answer to the question. Sorry I didn't really answer it, but yeah. The actual mold is made by a mold maker. Super boring answer. There are so many molds out there because everything is injection molded, like so many things, that really there's an industry just for mold makers. It's a very specialized piece of equipment because there's water channels running through it. It interfaces with the machine in certain ways. So it's just kind of like mold maker is the answer. Yeah. Yeah, is any of the recycled plastic donated? We've gotten, everything from free to we pay for it, and it just depends. Or like we get a good price on something and it has zinc in it, so we end up paying an extra $8,000 and time. So like it's all over the place. Most of the stuff that we get for free is stuff ultimately that we have to grind down. So, like discs, we have our disc recycling program, the aforementioned program, and we get like on average, I'd say like 5 to 8 discs a day is our average for a week. And so there's just constantly discs coming in through that. Those are free, but we give people a discount to our website if they send discs to recycle. So yeah. It's crazy how many dog chewed discs are out there. It's insane. And equally crazy is how many brand new discs we get. People send in discs that are just fine. Like 2 of a disc that they thought they'd like that they got brand new and they just don't want. I don't know why our program is their best option for that, because I think they could sell it. But we take all discs that are still good to fly and donate those. So we've donated thousands of discs to schools and U-Play and clubs and stuff like that. So yeah, I won't make a good disc out of a good disc. That's stupid. So yeah, yeah.
So y'all do ghost stamping to not waste for foil and things. What does it look like to pair with other companies like Foundation or Disc Golf Expo to make actually those stamps for?
Yeah. Really boring answer again. He asked about hot stamping, and it's the same for us and the other companies. They just have foil in between. There's a company that makes those. It's basically like a company that specializes in it, and a CNC that's pumping them out crazy quick. Like if you, yeah, it's wild. So yeah, right here. Yeah.
I know you said you were trying to figure out what to do with some of the plastic that's not usable, but like what are some of the possibilities that you could do with something?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the world's your oyster. What can we do with plastic that is contaminated when we get it in? I'm currently trying to solve that problem. It's on the back burner because we have space to store the stuff. So right now it's kind of not a priority, but so like that, the metal separator kicks, the metal falls out, and some regrind falls out with it. So we weren't able to just recycle the zinc unless we have someone stand there with a magnifying glass, pull out the zinc from that little bit, and then keep going for 20,000 pounds. That's just not scalable. So we currently have probably 2,000 pounds of plastic that also has zinc in it at a very high ratio because it's everything that kicked out of that we're just trying to figure out what to do with. I'm looking into compression molding, which is how Vibram discs were made. It's just basically like a mold. You asked about the piece of the mold. It's basically two pieces that just compress, and then it just cooks in there for like 15 minutes. I'm kind of looking into that because that's a common way to recycle mixed plastics. So instead of separating TPU with this plastic and that plastic and that plastic, which can't be melted down together in an injection machine, you can just compress them together. So I'm kind of looking into that. I'm thinking like, I don't know how the dyes work for that or like the molds work for that, but it would be really cool if we could figure out like, you know, you win an MA4 tournament and you get a little trophy. Like it'd be really cool to make like a little, whatever the minis and trophies and stuff like that out of those mixed plastics. We should probably still get the zinc out, but.
Make a disc for dogs so they don't chew up ours.
Well, that's the problem is, so make a disc for dogs was the recommendation. No, it's all good. We thought about it. That was actually one of the first places my mind went. But I have a dog, and I cannot imagine something happening to my dog, and I'm not going to take contaminated and make something that a dog's chewing. Yeah, so it's a personal thing I couldn't do. So yeah.
I was thinking of the other stuff.
Totally. No, totally. It's, yeah. Yeah, give them a bone so they don't chew discs anyway. Yeah, right here.
So, like you mentioned earlier, a lot of other manufacturers are doing recycled plastic discs now, which
Yeah.
is great for sustainability, but probably not the best from a business case for your company. How do you see Trash Panda continuing to evolve, continuing to drive sustagnability in the disc golf industry with increased competition?
It's a great question. He was asked, can you guys hear in the back? I should keep repeating the questions, right? Oh, you're good? What has a good, I was going to say eagle ears, but that's wrong. Eagle eyes. What has good hearing? Owl. Okay, cool. Anyway, probably not the best for our company if other people are making recycled plastic. I disagree because I started as a disc golfer who just wanted to throw recycled plastic, and at the end of it, I would just be a disc golfer who gets to throw recycled plastic. So if other people making recycled plastic disc ultimately puts us out of business, I've said from day one, I will be utterly stoked about that because I believe in this, and there is so much plastic out there that every single disc golf manufacturer could use recycled plastic and we wouldn't use all of it, just TPU. So we just got a sample in that was this regrind that we haven't tested yet. I actually want to make a video testing it to show people what it's like to get something you don't know what it is, and now you have to put it in the machine and you have a shot clock to figure it out because you only have this much, and like, what is it? So anyway, video coming soon. Like and subscribe. So with that one, I was told that that company that has that regrind has a truckload a month, which is 40,000 pounds just every month. And that's one company with one product. It's crazy how much is out there. So I don't think we'll go out of business anyway. I just, I don't know. I'm not too worried about that.
So you're just
and we'll
keep
keep,
pumping out discs, and
yeah.
just gonna keep buying them.
Yeah, exactly.
Throwing them in the tree.
And we'll keep innovating, and ultimately, you know, I as much as I am the optimist who believes that like this is really important and people can get on board, there's also the pessimist in the back of my head who's like, not everyone will get on board. There's people who are driving down costs, doing the easiest thing possible because all they care about is the bottom line. And that's fine. That'll leave room for us at the table too. So that's a roller coaster of emotions kind of answer, but there it is. Probably like a couple more right here.
As much as you've already learned, when you saw that recent MVP video, were there any aha moments where you went,
Yeah.
did you do that?
Yeah. Great question. As much as we've learned, was there anything we learned from the MVP video? I think the most fascinating thing in the MVP video, so with discs, it's super hard to injection mold in the center because you're going from thin to thick. Now MVP is just going thin to thin. They're injecting at the thickest part, and then with overmolding, they're injecting at the thickest part, which is the right way to do it. What I found to be fascinating on our side, and most manufacturers, the reason you deal with so much flashing is because you're trying to pack out that edge. MVP does not have to pack it out like we do, but they're still flashing the disc. So that just tells you how complex TPU is and how much pack and hold it needs. I think that's fascinating that they still deal with flashing. So I don't know that totally answers it, but yeah.
It's cool how they have their cutter to intentionally have flashing.
Yeah.
It's consistent.
No, that design, yeah, that was a big aha. Because like I think every disc golf manufacturer will copy that at a certain point. Because designing around that constraint is ingenious. To their credit, sharing it is amazing. So they are making the sport better just by way of that one video. It's incredible. And I'm like, major kudos to them. So one more over here, and that's gonna be it.
Have you guys ever considered doing small batch or single source using for kind of like contaminants or like different fluctuations?
Small batch, single what?
Single source, like getting like making a very small batch of discs and doing a single type of plastic from one place, you know, kind of regulate how they fly and contaminants.
Yeah. No, because we are in the business of keeping plastic out of landfills, so I can't really control what's going to end up in a landfill. I can just control that I'll do something with it. So I care less that this inner core and that inner core fly the exact same. I care more that that plastic didn't end up in a landfill and that plastic didn't end up in a landfill. So yeah, that's kind of the way we see it. That was a great note to end on. I wanted this to be mostly about disc, not about Trash Panda. I hope that was clear, but a lot of Trash Panda questions were asked, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I love nerding out about this stuff. I'll be here for the next day, so if you want to talk about it, it's so cool. Bottom line, what every disc golf manufacturer is doing is so impressive, genuinely. I think the art of making a disc, it's too bad that it's every manufacturer's Coca-Cola secret, because I want all of them to share it because it's just genuinely so impressive. So just next time you go out and you have your bag and you pull out your favorite disc, just know like that's genuinely a piece of art. Like the science behind it is incredible. So yeah, I'm fascinated by it. I love it. And yeah, thanks for chatting.